Good morning and welcome to the Workforce Observer. We are so pleased to have with us today Jo Matkin, Chief Executive at TALiNT Partners. Jo is a people and growth-focused executive with deep experience in building workforce and talent businesses. I have had the pleasure of working with her for a number of years, and it is really great to have you here, Jo. Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be with you, and it's lovely to have an opportunity to spend time with you again, Subhadra.
It is. Thank you for doing this. So, Jo, from your perspective now at TALiNT Partners, and you've been there, around less than 6 months, right?
Yes, 4 months.
But it's a great perch. What are the biggest trends that you are seeing that shape the industry today, in the UK and US?
Well, so yes, very fortunate to have joined TALiNT Partners as Chief Executive, and we occupy a pretty enviable position, actually. So we sit at the heart of the talent ecosystem between staffing firms, HR tech firms, employers. So that gives us a real purview across the whole global industry. And we spend a lot of time talking to employers about what are the things keeping them awake at night and what are the big trends and the challenges that they're facing. And there's probably about 7 or 8 key themes that keep repeating. But the 2 that stand out, particularly in 2025, are building skills-based organisations and the rise and adoption of AI. And that's not just in talent acquisition, but just the impact of artificial intelligence on work. That's probably a whole podcast in itself. And I'm sure we'll get into AI as well.
Right, we will. But so let's talk about your first thing that you mentioned. You said, so what do you mean by building a skills-based organization? What does that mean? I mean, I know what it means, but explain what your thinking is.
Well, let's start with the imperative, because I think that term's been used quite a lot. People talk about building skills-based organisations, and I think a little bit in the same way as total talent, where people have been saying that's a conceptual thing that we might get to in the future, it's becoming much more of an imperative, and let me explain why. So the skills that are needed in business over the next 5 to 10 years are not the skills that exist in organisations right now. And I'm sure you've probably already been quoted the World Economic Forum report about 170 million jobs being created, but 92 million of those being displaced. So there's a significant number of jobs that will exist in 2030 that don't exist now. And the only way that we're going to be able to fill those jobs with the skills that are needed is to start breaking components of work down into skills and tasks. And there's a multitude of ways that work can get done. But in order to effectively achieve that, a lot of companies are now starting to say, right, we need to start with skills rather than filling jobs and filling roles. And that's a debate that we're having continuously with our employers. But it's also something that TALiNT Partners is running events on and actually bringing people together to talk about the practicalities of how you really put that into practice.
Right. And what are the kind of skills? I mean, I know you're going to say AI, but before we get into the AI theme, what are the kind of skills that you're seeing that are mostly now in demand, that staffing firms are kind of saying, oh gosh, we've got to train our people internally as well as who we bring on? Are you seeing any skills that are standing out? And maybe it's more than a couple, but, it'd be nice to have a sense of what they are.
So from a staffing firm perspective, and again, it really starts with defining what is a staffing firm today. What's a staffing firm going to become and how can it serve its clients? But from a staffing firm perspective, we're starting to see a shift in where you might have had somebody whose job was a recruiter. What they really are having to become is a technician, somebody that can work with data, somebody that can really understand how to operate AI and AI-driven tools in order to deliver services to their customers. So that's a combination of curiosity, technology skills, being really comfortable working with data. It's so much more than being a salesperson or being able to pick up the phone, because it's responding to the way that the whole market is shifting. I think on the broader topic of skills-based organisations, that cuts across everything. So when we've talked to different employers that are trying to assess their skills taxonomy and understand what tasks they need to complete and what skills they've got in their business, that is not sector specific. That's just a way of working and operating that enables people to be more effective in growing their organisations.
Right. What about the role of the recruiter? talking about new skills. How has that changed? And then we can talk about AI. How do you see it,
So do you mean the role of the recruiter in a staffing firm or an internal talent acquisition team?
Let's talk about both, because I think this is important. Let's first talk about the role of the recruiter in the staffing firm. Like, how does that change? And then the role of the recruiter in a internal, in a corporate talent acquisition team.
So I think with the role hasn't changed, right? So I suppose the role of the recruiter and the role of the staffing firm is to help organisations fill their vacancies. It's to help organisations get work done. The way in which that's being done is the thing that's changing. So there's this whole continuum, right? Because I think, and this does, you can't help but have the conversation when it comes to thinking about it from an AI perspective, because recruiters have a whole set of tools available to them that they didn't have before. So the role of the recruiter needs to be almost like a recruitment operations person who is operating the tools available to them in order to connect with the candidates and connect with the customers. So I think that it becomes much more of an operator type role than it does necessarily a sales role. The role of the internal talent acquisition person, and again, this is a conversation we have a lot with employers. They are really having to move to being talent strategists. They're having to understand and horizon scan for the skills that the organisation is going to need in the mid to long term. And it's not just about filling vacancies and filling requisitions. They need to be workforce planning experts. They need to be able to understand the implications of AI for the jobs that they may be filling. They need to be able to look at work in the context of, is this something that can be automated? Is this something that have an AI agent applied to it? Or is this something that requires human skills? So that's a real evolution in the role of talent acquisition, because what you're effectively doing is saying, what are the different ways in which these tasks can be performed? And then do I need to go to a staffing partner to achieve that? Do I need to go to a hiring platform to achieve that? Do I need to have an employer value proposition to source that talent from the market directly? So it's a complex and highly skilled position now. And I think talent acquisition has to sort of raise the bar in order to be able to do what actually AI can now do and more.
Right. So, I mean, this is a great segue. So how do you see AI? A threat, an opportunity? And I know it's very, it's like, kind of cliched. Is it a threat? Is it an opportunity? But do you see any examples of, like standout change brought about by AI?
Yeah, so I'm very much in the opportunity camp, but I think, again, it depends on your perspective. So is it a threat to the traditional way that staffing firms have operated? Yes, 100% it is. Is it a threat to staffing as an industry? No, I think it's an opportunity. I think it creates an opportunity in ways that perhaps we don't always necessarily think. So I have a lot of conversations that are about how can we use AI to improve our sourcing, for example. Some of the coolest examples of how staffing firms are getting more effective, more efficient for their clients, they are using AI to automate and advance some of the more mundane things in the organisation, like compliance, like some of the back office pieces, and that frees them up to have richer conversations with customers, richer conversations with their candidates. But then there's, I suppose, the more exciting big macro AI changes. So I don't know if you've seen the recent press release from Adecco partnering with Salesforce. So they're actually going into creating a brand new company which will properly make use of agentic AI to get work done. And so that's an example of a combination of a tech firm and what we would have maybe described as originally a traditional staffing combining to become a proper talent workforce solutions outfit powered by technology, powered by AI, but not just AI to actually source roles, but AI being, part of the workforce mix and being able to serve that need. And then I will share one other example, because I think it's really interesting when people think about what's the problem we're trying to solve, and they create something from the ground up that entirely disrupts the staffing industry. So it's another example, a company called Mercor, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But they've had a 1 billion valuation, $100 million Series B funding, and they're effectively a one-to-many hiring platform that you can apply, be interviewed by a human-like AI agent, and then have your application pushed out to thousands of organisations. I think it was started by a 21-year-old, and they filled 3,000 jobs last month using that platform.
Yeah.
So,
how do you spell it? Spell the name so that I can...
Mercor.
MER. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So
interesting. Yeah.
Really interesting example of, if you're not starting with staffing or a mindset of staffing, you're just starting with how do I connect as many people to work and to as many companies as possible, and use AI as the heartbeat of that.
Right.
It's,
right.
That's a scaling business. Let's see. Interested to see how that one pans out.
No, it's a very interesting time for sure. So, given the environment, how do you feel? How can employers, what we refer to in different parlance as buyers, and the ecosystem, staffing firms, RPO, MSPs, tech providers, work more effectively together?
Well, you would expect me to say this, but I think we have a role at TALiNT Partners to play in that. So one of the things that we take really, really seriously is bringing the right partners into the room with employers, so that they can kind of come together over solving workforce issues and problems. And I think you'll know this from our previous lives, where there's almost an inherent suspicion on the part of buyers often to service providers. They're nervous of maybe being sold to. They're nervous of getting too far into a conversation and feeling that they have to work with that partner. But I think the industry, particularly the talent solutions industry, in the last 5 or 6 years has grown up so much in terms of really putting themselves in the space of solving customer problems. So in of themselves, they're becoming thought leaders. They are innovating. They're moving at pace in a way that perhaps employers or buyers can't do, because their job isn't to constantly be horizon scanning the market for the next solutions. So how can they do that better? I think buyers, employers need to bring their guard down and recognise the fact that the industry has lots of intelligent, helpful things to say, and spend more time in that environment and be more curious. And certainly that's something that we're on a mission to achieve. Right. And I think that providers, and I think they are already doing this, but really need to coalesce around solving customer problems. That's what they're there to do. They're there to solve customer problems. They're there to connect candidates with work. And I think if they can prove value in that, in solving those problems, rather than thinking, how can I get jobs from this organisation, then that's how they raise themselves as the type of organisations that employers and buyers really want to engage with. Right.
Fair. So your role as CEO, what do you see as your mission? Or I guess, what is a company's mission? And I know we've talked about this in the past, and even today you briefly touched on it. And I think that's part A. And part B is, what are the biggest challenges and things that you're seeing around this?
So
I think it'd be interesting to talk a little bit.
So today we exist to help people make better talent and technology decisions, and that cuts across the whole ecosystem, and the way we do that is events, awards, content and membership. But if I sort of translate that into the, I suppose, the broader mission, we really want to build a global network, a global community, to help shape the future of work. That's really what we're here to do. We want to sit at the centre of that, and we really want to elevate the whole ecosystem. So the ways in which we can do that are many. right? But I think if we're talking about AI day in, day out, we have to be an organisation that's embracing that as well. So part of our direction of travel and our mission is to be able to leverage AI, leverage agents, leverage that type of adoption in the work that we do. And we talk about that internally quite a lot. And secondly, is we really want to be at the forefront of what's coming next. So the mission is to position TALiNT Partners as a destination organisation if you want to understand what the future of work looks like, if you want to understand what technology you should be deploying, if you want to understand what the competitor landscape looks like and what your peers around you are doing. So that's sort of a summary of our mission and why we exist in the world, or why we should.
And what are the challenges you're facing as you kind of, I guess, do your daily business?
Right, so CEO challenges. So I think it's always prioritization is one. What do we do in the short term? What do we do in the long term? I think, we talk about this again as a team. Our team challenge is distilling white noise into kind of meaningful information and actionable insights. So we spend a lot of time, and I spend a lot of time thinking about that. As with any CEO role, we're a business. We want to grow. We want to scale, and so I'm always interested in finding ways that we can generate revenue, and that we can expand our offering and partner strategically. And then from a people perspective, it's making sure that we've got a team of motivated and excited employees who want to come on the journey with us.
If you had to just point to one of your biggest challenges, what would it be? Besides prioritizing, just in the business. It's one big challenge. What would it be?
Staying relevant. That's it. Staying relevant, because there are lots of organisations who are network businesses, who are trade bodies, who are I suppose our competitive landscape, and we have to be in a position where people are choosing to engage with us above others or alongside others in order to solve their problems. And that requires us to run a little bit faster than everybody else who's in our space. And it requires us to be more curious and more hungry for information. So, yes, if I had to distill the challenge, it's that. And, keeping the tactics going while we think strategically about the future.
Fair. The thing is, recruitment doesn't always have the best public perception. There is a negativity around it that I'm sure you're familiar with that. So what can we do as an industry to improve this perception and change the way that I guess the industry is viewed?
Yeah.
And I'm asking you this because you are sitting in between, employers as well as staffing firms, and in the middle, and you're providing information. So, what is your take?
I think it's an ongoing mission. I don't know that one will ever be solved, and the reason that I don't know it will ever be solved is because I think, and this may be controversial, but I think to some degree it has the reputation it has because of some bad actors, right? So I think that there are still staffing firms who don't do themselves or the industry any favours in terms of just general behaviours. So that might be around margin, it might be around just the general way that they generate opportunities, tactics, So I think, and I don't think this is unique to the recruitment industry. This is every industry has its poor players and its great players. What I'm really heartened by, though, and I'll give you a real example. So we've just launched our membership program in the US. So it's something we've been doing in the UK for about 3 or 4 years now, where we have membership of a number of small, medium and large staffing firms who are in our network, and they come to our events and they engage with us and we advise them. We've just started that in the US. And one of the things, this is only a small, like a subset of the industry, because it's a huge industry, but I'm incredibly encouraged by the fact that every organisation we've engaged with in that context who've come to us for membership has been passionate, has been purpose-driven, has a real desire to be staffing firms of the future, and are all very focused on adding value to customers, adding value to candidates, and solving business problems. So I think the only way that you really improve the perception of the industry is to elevate the stories of those that are operating in that way. And we can act as an amplifier for that. And to give those brilliant organisations a voice, but hold them up as the example of what good looks like in the industry. Because I think it is not impossible. In fact, it's really, really possible to be profitable, successful, growing, and also ethical, purpose-driven, and solutions-focused. And I think that's a kind of the persona of the people that certainly operate within our network. So it's part of our job to make sure we elevate those great stories, and it's part of their job to lead the charge for the rest of the industry and say, this is what good looks like.
All right, fair. Let's talk about predictions. If you had to predict, what do you think this world of work is going to look like 1 year from now, and then 3 years from now? And you can have at it, because it's just a prediction.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think we're in a place where change is a constant, right? So there's so much going on in terms of from a political perspective, from a technology perspective. We're in this constant state of evolution. So I think there'll be parts of the industry that will remain a little bit paralysed, and will kind of keep heads down and just hope that it will all go away and go back to normal and we can carry on as we were. And I think that part of the industry is really, really, in a bit of an existential crisis. There's a real risk there that they won't be around next year, or they certainly won't be around in their current form. I think for organisations, talent solutions firms, staffing firms who are really accepting the new normal and really diving into how they can leverage automation, how they can jump on board with AI, how they can get closer to their customers, how they can be very specific about the markets they're operating in, what the growth markets look like, stop doing things that aren't serving them well. I think that's going to be the survivors. But I do think that there will also be this convergence of much more of this platform-led, AI-first hiring capability that is almost going to, it certainly will cut out sections of the industry. But that.
Sorry, you meant, when you said platform, you mean talent platforms?
Yeah, and specifically these AI-powered talent platforms, because I think there's loads of talent platforms out there, but I think those that are built AI agent first without even having any kind of level of human operation, I think that's going to take a chunk of the market, but there will always be the need to have the relationships, the human interactions. I think it's just companies working out where they want to play, who they want to play with, and what tools to use. And something that came up the other day in one of our conversations was, if you're in that paralysed place, just do something. If you're thinking about automating or adopting AI, just do one thing. Just start. Don't sit and think about it any longer, because you're going to get overtaken otherwise.
And 3 years from now, what is the landscape going to look like?
Gosh, 3 years from now, I think there'll be a lot of consolidation. in the marketplace. And I think we'll see a lot more of these partnerships that I touched on, the Adecco Salesforce. So as large firms start to realise the sort of technology and AI imperative, they're either going to be building solutions or they're going to be looking for strategic partnerships to reformulate themselves in a new way. And I think they need to do that at pace, because 3 years from now there'll probably be, there'll be fewer firms with different directions of travel, and it will be those that are probably taking action now or who already have who'll be the survivors.
Yeah, I mean, but to be fair, also the industry has contended with a lot of change. I mean, think about, how far. I mean, people have always, ever since I've entered the industry, and that was like almost 2 decades ago, people have been talking about, it's over, VMS, I mean, technology, VMS, I remember was such a to-do, and all the backlash against it, and then now the MSP, people have been predicting the death of the MSP for the last, I don't know, but, it's making money, it's going, it's going strong.
But it's all evolution, isn't it? So I don't think this is the death of anything. I think it's a reformulation and an evolution of the way that people will need to operate in a new paradigm. So and if that means a staffing firm becoming a tech or a tech enabled firm, then that will be the new face of staffing. It's not the death of staffing, it's just a reformulation with new ingredients.
Fair. Advice. What advice do you have? And now for both sides, for the employers, your HR tech people, as well as staffing firms, the providers, and not just the HR tech people, but also employers, the HR, people who are working in HR in organizations and come to your events and want to hear what the providers have to say.
Yeah, so a couple of things. So I think, if we sort of bring it all the way back to the skills conversation, because some of the skills of the future have been described as, resilience and curiosity and being, and leadership skills and all those human skills that we're going to need to survive when technology's doing all the skilly bits for us. So the advice on the employer side would be stay curious, and I extend that to mean be curious and listen to what the industry has to say, because the industry has lots of brilliant solutions. They, whether it's talent solutions, tech or staffing, they work very, very hard to try and solve those problems. So I think be curious not just about what your peers have got to say, but be curious about what the industry has got to say, and come with open ears, because they might just be able to solve your problems. And I think as far as the advice to the industry goes is, I do think that this change is different. I do think that the pace and scale at which AI is absorbing jobs, changing jobs, and eating up some of the more knowledge-based jobs. It's not just the sort of entry-level roles that are getting eaten up. I don't think we've quite caught up to that just yet. So I think recognise that change is needed, take action, and start thinking about what your firm of the future looks like. Because if you're not thinking about that now, you really should be, because I think you'll get taken over if you don't.
Well, thank you very much, Jo Matkin. It was a pleasure. I really enjoyed the conversation and your insights.